Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a virtual tour of the Vernal Pools out at Grasslands Regional Park. My name is Sabrina Britt, and I am the volunteer coordinator with Yolo Basin Foundation. We are an educational nonprofit that provides educational opportunities to our community, youth through adults, about the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. Those are the wetlands that the Yolo Causeway drives over between West Sacramento and Davis. And we can share with you our logo and our mission statement. We have Fred at home who is moderating today, who will be helping to share images to reference what we're sharing with you out here. It's a very windy day, as you can tell. And so we have images to complement what you're seeing if the live plant life is a bit blurry out here due to the wind blowing. To expand public appreciation and stewardship of our wetlands concerning the Yolo Basin, which is a larger area that the bypass fits in. Today, however, we are educating about Grasslands Regional Park through a Habitat Conservation Fund grant that we have in conjunction with Yolo County Parks and Rec. I am here at Grasslands Regional Park. This park is located at the corner of Tremont and Mace Boulevard. So we are about 3 miles southwest of the Yolo Causeway. And this area has a lot of accessible features to you. We can share a map with you of Grasslands Regional Park, so you get the layout. So you can see it is south of Puda Creek, just a few miles south. There are 2 parking lots out here, one at the Tremont Mace Boulevard parking lot, where you can access some trails among the trees and do some bird watching. There's also an archery station at that location, at that parking lot. From that parking lot, you can also drive a little further out in order to do some airplane flying. So if you have toy airplanes, there is an airplane society that does gliding and flying out here. So that is available to the public. And if you go down south a little further from the Tremont Mace conjunction there, intersection, you will find the parking lot at the dog park. And so there is a nice large dog park for you to run your dogs if you have a dog family. And out from there, you can access trails. There's also a picnic area as well. Now, the vernal pools we are standing in are protected, and there are endangered and threatened species of plants and animals out here. And it is up to us to protect these. They get federal protection support, oversight, but it is really up to the people to help these lands stay protected and bring back those populations that are endangered and threatened. And so these areas are not accessible to the public. Some of the trails get you close to the gates that surround the vernal pools, but we bring you inside virtually today. If you have questions throughout your time today, you can put those into the chat feature. So if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a big wind gust. You go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, and the chat there, you can choose to send your message to the moderator for questions. That is Fred at home. He will be happy to field your questions to our tour guide, Karen Lisey, today. So I'd like to introduce you to Karen Lisey. She is a PhD in aquatic ecology, and she studied the effects of invasive fish on aquatic habitats. She is a volunteer with Yolo Basin Foundation and Jepson Prairie. And without further ado, I hand it over to Karen to share with you about the plants and animals that use these vernal pools. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, well, welcome to Grasslands Regional Park on a really invigorating vernal pool day out here in the wind. I think that the wind today is reaching its peak between 9 and 10 o'clock. So that's right about where we are now. We have gusts up to 25 miles an hour. But I'm standing in the middle of one of the vernal pools. You don't usually see them at this time of year. Well, you do usually see them at this time of year, but they're a lot different. So we're going to pan around so you can see the vernal pool behind and around me. It stretches to the north, which is the direction the wind is coming from. And then it's a real long vernal pool, and it stretches down to the south. We're near the south end of it here. But you can see the land around here is pretty flat. Still, there are minor dips and undulations. So there's enough of depressions to allow us to have vernal pools in this area. And right where I'm standing, there's a PVC pipe that sticks up. And when the camera gets back around to me, I don't think you'll be able to see the side of it, but there are numbers on the side, inches. So this is a way for people who monitor the vernal pools to come out and see how deep the water is in the pool without having to walk out into the middle of it and find the middle and drop a plumb bob down or something to do it. So anyway, referring back to the map that was just up, I wanted to just point out that we're a mile and a half south of Pewter Creek, and you can see Pewter Creek on that map running from west to east into the Yolo bypass. And just to the north of the creek, there's a levee that comes along from the west, and to the east, where the creek stops, that levee curves to the north and becomes the west levee for the Yolo bypass, the Yolo Basin. The southern levee along Pewter Creek, just to the northeast of Grasslands here, curves around to the south and ends. And in this area, before the levees were built, before agriculture was a major, a major endeavor here, this area was subject to flooding in the winters. And even now, with the levees, it is subject to flooding in those years when we have high rainfall. So flooding is a feature that helped with distribution of the species that we're going to talk about. We want to show you a cross-section of the vernal pools so that you can see the features that are important to their formation. And features that are important to their formation are, I like to look at the picture, but I can't do that and face the right way. Features that are important to their formation are uneven topography. So as I said, even though it's relatively level here, there's undulation here and there are depressions. And then another really important feature, the most important feature, is an impervious layer, which can be either hard pan or clay pan or volcanic mud, depending on the area of California that you're in. In this area, it's a clay pan layer. But that clay pan layer, that impervious layer, when we have rain, keeps the rain from continuing to percolate down through the soil and into the subsoil, and it holds it near the surface. So it fills up the space between the layer and the surface, and where the depressions are, it fills up to the point where we have freestanding water, and those are our vernal pools. Why do we call them vernal pools? Well, vernal is another word for spring. And here in California, we're blessed with that Mediterranean climate. So we have the wet season, and then we have the dry season. And that dry season is when the pools dry down. And that's what makes them basically spring pools, because they're only here part of the year. So all of these features lead to diversity in the area, and California is a hotspot for vernal pool plants and to some extent for vernal pool fairy shrimp also. But there are 20 climatically and floristically different zones in California, and that makes it a hotspot for vernal pool plants. Most states only have about 3 or less floristic zones. One thing that's really important to know is that there's less than 10% of vernal pool habitat remaining in California, and most of that habitat has been lost to development, to construction, to increased housing. So the important thing about vernal pool habitat that does give it some protection in general is that the water layer is hydrologically connected to rivers, and it can provide. We're going to go and look at a vernal pool in the wet phase, which is a different world than we're in right now.
Okay.
But good? Is it good, Fred?
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen right now.
Okay, I can't hear you very well, but
Yeah, I just
fall year with fall, we have the start of winter rains, and so the pools start to fill up, and they're inundated in the winter with the winter rains. Some of the vernal pool plants germinate below the water surface, but others germinate as the water dries and the edges become not saturated, but you know, a little more terrestrial and damp, so they germinate around the edge. And the water in these pools is turbid. It's clay, has clay solids in it, so it's really opaque and you can't see through the water. But this fact of wet and dry conditions is what allows these little plants to persist here. They have this really high ratio of flower surface to leaves. They don't put their energy into growing tall, but they put their energy into flowering, and setting seed, and being ready for the dry season when it comes. They're densely packed, and that's what gives us the large displays of color. So moving on, we'll show you a progression of how it looks in a normal year. And this year we actually did have color early on, but it's been such an early year that everything has dried out by now. First, you see on number 20, you see a foreground where there's blue and then there's a white swath of color behind it. And that blue should be Downingia, which is a wonderful little plant. We'll show you a close-up of that in a couple of minutes. And then there's a good chance that the white behind that is popcorn flower. Both of those flowers occur here in these vernal pools, and you can see how dense the flowers are in these pictures. As the pools dry down further, those ring of flowers keep progressing into the center and the most saturated areas. And the next picture shows the pool when it's basically free of water.
Sorry for the interruption. There's another technical issue that we want to fix. Fred, we are seeing your entire computer screen, not just the images you're sharing.
got it. Thanks.
Should I keep talking?
Thank you. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. We are having, thanks to the wind today, we're having lots of little challenges out here. So this is quite exciting. You can't hear me?
No, you're fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you should be seeing, I can't walk over to see it with you, but you should be seeing a slide that shows an area of solid gold colors in the middle of the pool. And those are likely gold fields. And perhaps there's some yellow carpet, and butter and eggs, other vernal pool flowers in there. But as the pools dry, there's this progressive ring of flowers around the pool from one flower to another. We're going to take a look at some of those flowering species. And the first one that we're going to look at is goldfields. And first you'll see a close-up of two of the flowers. And then we're going to show you a picture of the bulk of them, which you have that big display of color. Really is that it's pollinized by a bee. It's a specialist bee. It only pollinizes goldfields, and it's called the mining bee. It lives underground, and it only is on the surface when flowers are ready for, when the flowers are active and ready for pollination. And it's a commensal relationship, so the flowers don't do well when the bee is absent or rare, and the bee doesn't do well when the flowers are rare. There are many of the flowers, vernal pool flowers, that have commensal relationships with specialist pollinators. So, what they look like this time of year. If it's not going to work, we'll just skip it. So I think we're not going to show you that. We're losing connectivity close to the surface of the ground, but at this time of year, we found one little tiny remnant flower, and the rest of the flowers, the flowers gone, the seeds are gone, all there's a little dried up stalk and the remnants of the sepals at the end. So I think we'll skip that. I think we'll show you a picture of cupped downingia, which are just really wonderful little flowers. They're low in the pool. They're very delicate little flowers. I think they're everybody's favorite. Every now and then you can see them blooming in the YOLO bypass, but they're really a vernal pool flower. And they also, even though they're small, they can provide big color. As I mentioned, during the spring, the pool dries down. So next, there's a picture of typical drying, and I believe that shows this pool. So you can see what it looks like as the water dries down. And then when you look closer, picture number 22 shows a close-up of goldfields in the drying substrate. And you can see the cracks around there. As the ground dries here, we said it's a clay pan. That clay expands when it gets wet, and when it dries, you get lots of cracks in the soil. So that's what you see as it dries, and that's what we have right now. Are you getting that to work at all? Because they can't hear me.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll go on. So this year, we've reached those dry conditions in April. You should see a slide of vernal pools during the dry season. That's number 27, Fred.
Got it.
Okay, thanks. The soil here is really alkaline, and the vernal plants have adapted to that and to the water. But progressive dry years allow a chance for non-native grasses to come in. And if you look here, you can see that we do have non-native grasses coming into this. So normally you would see in the dry season, you could see a lot of open space, but we're getting more non-native grasses in here. And one thing that happens as this happens and without grazing is that these non-natives can come in and progressively fill the pool, and without grazing, you lose 50 to 80% of the time that the pool is inundated with water. So over time, we have in areas lost the signature of vernal pools. So it's something to keep in mind. In the picture, the light golden area is the bottom of the pool, and the darker areas in the foreground that you see are the areas where there's more vegetation. That's where the non-native upland grasses are. Next, we want to show a picture of dwarf woolly marbles, and I'm really sorry that we're not show you what they look like right now, because in the pictures, they don't look very much like wool. But at this point in time, maybe I can find one. Well, okay. So dwarf woolly marbles are in the aster family, and there are 3 or 4 species of them. They grow in sheltered areas in the vernal pools, and then you find little clusters in among other vegetation. I think we're going to try to show them again, although I don't know if this is going to work. Dwarf woolly marbles is a great name for them, and on a good year they're bigger, but this year they're smaller, and as they dry out, they really look a lot like wool. Okay. So you can see these little round balls here. They just look like little bits of wool scattered out across the floor of the vernal pool. Okay.
We're replacing the scope right now.
Okay, we're going to go into blow wives.
Hold on for a sec.
Okay.
Colette?
Okay, now I guess you can see them. This is a challenge because I can't see the screens and I'm not really sure what's on, but here they are. Ta-da! Ta-da! There are woolly marbles, these just little tiny round balls on the ground. It looks like someone came and scattered little tiny balls of wool. Okay, we will try to show you some blow wives at this point. Blow wives I really like. They're a wonderful little flower, and when they're blooming, they never open up like a regular blossom. With any luck, we'll find them if a flag hasn't blown away. When they're flowering, they're compact, and they have little yellow flowers that look like straws. Then when the seed head forms, they're much more visible, and they look like really robust dandelion seed heads. There's going to be a delay, but we're going to try to show you what they look like now. There's one little seed head down in the ground here that hasn't dispersed. Whoops, it's dispersing as we speak. Moving the grass helped to start. But you can see these little tiny, these are the seeds right here with the color. Adventures in Photography. Okay, but you should be able to see them. So,
And I'll share a better image of them, Karen.
say that again.
I'm sharing a better image of them now.
Okay. Did you show the close-up on the ground?
Yes, it's showing right now.
Okay, so this is what they look like now. This is the remainder of the sepals here. It broke apart as we got the camera down here, moved things aside. But here are the little, here are the little seeds. Here's one. As I said, it's like they have this little propeller on top. There it is. I let go of it, the wind's going to blow it out of my hand. Ah, there it went. Never mind. Anyway, hopefully you can see a couple of them down here in the grasses. But they're designed to be wind dispersed, and today's a good day for it. So, okay, we will move on to Coyote Thistle. I think, let's see, what time do we have? I'm gonna skip the Coyote Thistle, and maybe Fred, you can show a picture of it, but we're not gonna try to get the visual of one. We found one little Coyote Thistle.
Okay, I am currently showing a picture.
Okay, so there are two different forms of Coyote Thistle. It germinates in the water and the leaves are hollow. The stem is hollow to get oxygen down to the roots. But then as it dries, as the pool dries, it has different form of leaves. They're these prickly leaves, and it's solid. It's a member of the carrot family. And supposedly it's the only prickly plant that appears in vernal pools. But there's another plant out here that we haven't identified that seems pretty prickly. So anyway, it's one of the very few short-lived perennials or biennials that occur in vernal pools. So it lives 2 years, maybe a little more, but that's pretty unique. Now, Grasslands is critical habitat, federal critical habitat for 4 species. And I'm going to try to get through those real quickly in the last 10 minutes that I have. 2 of them are grass species, very rare grass species, and 2 are vernal pool crustaceans in this area. So the grass species are part of a tribe of grasses, the orcut grasses, that are ancient grasses, and they're not closely related to any of the other grass species. Their ancestors were terrestrial plants. They grew on the shores of a great inland sea in the Central Valley. And when that sea receded, the plants colonized and adapted to these isolated saline and alkaline pools. And they evolved so that now they occur in vernal pools only. Both of the seeds of both plants germinate underwater. They also have hollow stems, and the seedlings have a couple of juvenile leaves that float on the surface of the ground or the water. And then as the pools dry, the plants grow vertically and set their seed heads. And they are, like pretty much all grasses that I know of, wind pollinated. So you should be looking at Solano Grass, and that one's only known from 2 vernal pool complexes. Jepson Prairie and Grasslands. It was first identified at Jepson Prairie, and then it was collected and shared with others, and it disappeared. So the common knowledge was that it had been extirpated, but then it was discovered here at Grasslands, and now it's been used. The seeds from Grasslands have been used to get it started again at Jepson Prairie. The other plant is not, but it's only known from those two locations. And the other grass here is Calusa Grass, and it is more common, and it's found in other pools besides claypan pools. There are 42 occurrences, and it's also found in volcanic vernal pools on the east side of the Sacramento Valley. And these were listed, state listed in the 70s, and then federally listed in 97, I believe. Last and dearest to my heart are the two vernal pool crustaceans that we have here. The vernal pool fairy shrimp and the vernal pool tadpole shrimp. And just to let you know, the wind is strong enough and it's gusting so that, you know, you have to figure out where you're going to stand to keep from blowing over. But the vernal pool fairy shrimp, you should be seeing a male, and this species is federally threatened. Again, this is critical habitat for this species. Vernal fairy shrimp and brine shrimp are part of an ancient order called Anostraca, and they were present in oceans before the rise of bony fish. And with the rise of fishes, various crustaceans developed methods of avoiding fish predation. The method that the Anostraca have taken us to only occur in fishless waters. So we have them in vernal pools. They also occur in alpine lakes where there are no fish. And I just read that they are in the ice in Antarctica. I had not heard that before, so I need to research that. But they occur in areas without fish. And they're generally 1/2 to 1 inch long. The male has a modified antenna. So if you look at them, they swim upside down. And if you see something that looks like a long walrus tusk coming from the head, that's his antenna. And they're used as claspers to hold the female in mating. But the males are identified by the various protrusions and shapes of those claspers. Vernal pool fairy shrimp are known as a cool water species. So they break dormancy from these little dormant eggs when the cool storms inundate the pools. And their growth is temperature dependent, but they can mature in as short as 18 days. So they can complete their life cycle in short-lived pools. And that's a good feature for them. The females, the next slide,
Yep.
are identified in part by the shape of their egg sac. And you can see the vernal pool fairy shrimp has this little round egg sac there. As the eggs are formed and then dropped onto the pool surface, the female exudes a chemical coating that gives them a very hard resistant shell. We call them cis, even though they're not cis, but they're very resistant to drying. And the embryo goes dormant until it's like a seed bank. They don't hatch every year, but in some years one will hatch and other years others will hatch. Again, they require cold storms to break dormancy, but if there are multiple cold storms in a year, they can have multiple hatches in a year, and that's unique for fairy shrimp. I said that they can withstand extreme conditions. They can withstand conditions, temperatures near boiling in water and still hatch and have undamaged embryos. Likewise, they've been in a vacuum for 10 years and still have hatched with no damage to the embryos. Also,
Vernal Pool soil has sat on a shelf for 25 years with a researcher and then been hydrated again, and they've hatched from that. There's some stories about them being on the outside of the Apollo on a mission and having survived. I haven't been able to find that in the literature yet, but I'm still looking. So the last species there is the vernal pool tadpole shrimp, Lepidurus packardi. This species is parthenogenic, so they don't need males. They produce their own viable eggs. And this species is endangered. It's only found in the Central Valley and San Francisco Bay area vernal pools. It's very rare. It needs longer lasting pools to reach maturity and have mature eggs. They're around 2 inches long. It takes them 54 days to grow, reproduce, and produce their eggs. They're often only found in 20% of the pools that get surveyed. An interesting thing about them is that their circulatory system, they look red, and their circulatory system has hemoglobin in it, like our blood does. They are predators, and like invertebrates, they produce multiple growth stages. And so when they go to a new stage, they shed that carapace. You can go to, well, I've seen this at Jepson Prairie. I haven't been out here at the time when they occur, and they don't occur in this pool. There are other pools at Grasslands we don't have access to yet where they do occur. But when they shed that carapace, the wind can blow them up and you'll have a rack of carapaces along the shoreline, which is pretty interesting to see. So just in the last thing or two, there are some state-sensitive bird species out here that can be seen foraging out here, and that includes Swainson's hawk. This is an area for Swainson's hawks, and white-tailed kite, and then northern harrier. And let's see, Fred, I think we're going to turn it over to you for questions now.
Yes, Karen, we do have 2 questions. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The first question is, are the plants you showed invasive or native?
The flowering plants that we showed are all native. Those are all vernal pool species. The plants that are invasive, that are non-native, are the grasses that you see along the shoreline, or the grass that I showed that's in the vernal pool itself. The plants that are invasive here are really the grasses. So there are ones like Italian rye. They're all Mediterranean grasses. Italian rye, there's a barley. I think there's some native wild barleys, but one of the barleys here is a non-native. There's a brome that's called ripgut brome. And again, if you see the area around the vernal pool, those are the non-native grasses. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that was very good. Can you tell us about the invasive species studies that were done on the water systems?
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of that. There's a wind.
Yes. Can you tell us about the invasive species studies that you did on the water systems, or others have conducted on the water systems?
I'm not sure what water systems they mean. You mean?
Probably the vernal pools.
You know, there are different kinds of studies. There's a study done by Jamie Marty, who was a student at Davis and is continuing, you know, to do research in vernal pool habitat. But one of the studies she did while a graduate student was looking at the effect of different grazing regimes on vernal pool habitats and the intrusion by grasses. And she found that continuous grazing was better resulted in a more natural hydro period, the time during which the pool is inundated, than cessation of grazing. That cessation of grazing, the period during which the pool is inundated, would shorten, which makes it less likely that the vernal pool native plants and crustaceans are going to survive, particularly the crustaceans.
Are there any other places in the world besides California that have vernal pools?
There are vernal pools on every continent. If there are vernal pools, presumably not in Antarctica. Evidently, if there are vernal pool crustaceans there, that's one thing. But since that's a frozen landscape, I'm not aware of vernal pools there. But there are vernal pools on every other continent. Vernal pools in Africa, vernal pools in the desert, large, as far as crustaceans go, large waters like the Great Salt Lake, like Mono Lake, all harbor fairy shrimp or brine shrimp. But the others that as far as I'm aware, most of those other places do not have the floral displays that we have. As I said at the outset, California is a real hotspot for the vernal pool plants and the vernal pool flowers that we have here. That's very unique.
And Karen, we have a question from Liz. You mentioned that grazing might reduce the invasion of grasses if she understood correctly. Are there any plans or is it possible to use or manage grazing to help reduce invasive grasses?
So that has been looked at some, and one study that I'm aware of, I worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and someone was looking at the control of the Italian rye, the Lolium, at, I believe it was at Delavan. This is somewhere around over 10 years ago when we saw this, but they were concerned about the Lolium competing with a plant in the vernal pools, and as I recall, they found that the cattle would preferentially eat the Lolium up to a point where the Lolium dried more and the vernal pool plant was still green, and the cattle would switch. So they had to move, and I'm going to end now. But anyway, they had to stop it at that point. So the point is it needs to be managed, but it can be used, and it's used. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karen. You did a wonderful job leading our tour out here today, considering our windy conditions. Thank you to Fred for being our moderator at home. Thank you to Colette for being our videographer, and to Catherine, who was on our scope view showing you the close-up of the plants out here on the ground. I want to thank you, all of you, for joining us today as well. Our virtual programs are winding down, and in fact, on May 15th, our popular Bat Talk and Walk programs, the tickets go on sale, and that will be a hybrid program. We will have a virtual talk and then an in-person caravan out to see the Mexican free-tailed bats fly out from under the Yolo Causeway. So watch for those tickets to go on sale at yolobasin.org under our Bat Talk and Walk program tab. If you have children in the family, our summer camps are back in person. We have camps available for children entering 1st grade through 3rd grade, and then 3rd through 5th, and entering 4th through 6th. Those are our different camp levels. We also have our wetland tours of the City of Davis wetlands going back in person. Our Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area tours in person are already sold out, and they start up again in the fall where we will have more space. But the City of Davis wetlands tours still have space, so you can go online and take a guided tour of the City of Davis wetlands. Those are free to you, and we appreciate your support and donations and your participation out here. and we appreciate you being with us today as well. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your beautiful weekend. Bye-bye.